Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking into the case of David Bruce Morton,
Oh,
an
yeah?
American serial killer.
Wow. That's
And
nice.
we've got some excerpts from a Wikipedia article about
Uh-huh.
him. And trust me, this is a wild one.
Okay.
This story is one of escalating violence
Hmm.
and, sadly, delayed justice.
Okay.
What's really unsettling is that one of his victims was actually accused of murder by her cellmate,
Oh, wow.
the very person who actually committed the crime.
It's like a reverse
Yeah,
confession.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. What's so fascinating about this case is how it really reveals
Yeah,
the kind of limitations of the justice system.
at the time.
Yeah, especially at the time.
Yeah,
Without solid evidence.
right.
Like, even when there's a confession from another inmate,
Yeah,
the case can just fall apart.
yeah.
It really underscores how important all the forensic advancements are that we have today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started with Morton himself.
Okay.
He was born in Oklahoma in 1959,
Okay.
and by age 17, he was already committing armed robbery.
Wow. So he was already on
Yeah.
the path to trouble.
Yeah, and this early criminal activity is actually like a classic red flag.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we see this in a lot of serial killer cases. It's like
Mhm.
a progression of the crimes becoming increasingly violent.
So it just keeps escalating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he even escaped from prison after that first arrest,
Oh, wow.
but was recaptured,
Okay.
of course.
All right. So he gets out and
But when he got out,
Yeah.
he didn't really go straight. He
Yeah.
moved to New Mexico,
Mhm.
continued with the armed robberies,
Yeah.
got a 5-year sentence.
Wow. And even that didn't stop him.
I know
So
that.
this is where it gets even more chilling.
Okay.
It's in New Mexico where the Morton's crimes take a really dark turn.
Okay.
His first confirmed victim was a woman named Janet Benoit.
Okay.
This was in 1983. She was
Hmm.
just 22 years old.
Wow.
And she was traveling from Colorado to Arizona.
Okay.
And she stopped in Santa Fe.
Right.
And tragically, she was found murdered in her motel room.
Now, this is a detail from the article that really stuck with me.
Okay.
Apparently, the motel had this really serious issue with their keys.
What was it?
A lot of the guest keys were actually master keys.
Oh, my God.
So anyone could have gotten into her room.
That's terrifying.
I know, it's crazy.
And it makes you think, like,
Yeah,
how responsible was the motel for the safety of their guest?
right.
Janet's brother actually ended up suing the motel chain,
Oh, wow.
and they settled out of court.
Can you imagine the fear of knowing that your loved one was in a place that was supposed to be safe,
Right.
but was anything but
It's just a really stark reminder that even places that seem safe can be vulnerable.
Totally. So moving on to 1984,
Okay?
we have another tragic case,
Okay.
Carrie Lynn Mulvaney.
Okay?
She was a 25-year-old secretary,
Okay?
and she was raped and strangled in her apartment.
Oh, gosh.
And get this,
Mm-hmm.
Morton was her neighbor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what a twist.
And here's where the case takes a truly shocking turn.
Okay.
While Morton was in jail for a DUI,
Mm-hmm.
his cellmate claimed that he had confessed to Mulvaney's murder.
Oh my gosh. So he was
Yeah.
wrongfully accused by the actual murderer.
I know, it's crazy, right?
That's insane.
And despite a petition
yeah.
and trial in 1988,
Mm-hmm.
the case was dismissed due to insufficient evidence.
Wow.
So this lack of solid evidence, even with a potential confession,
Yeah.
is a crucial point here.
It really highlights how difficult it was to prosecute these cases,
Yeah,
especially back then,
right?
you know?
Before
Do you
DNA,
think-
yeah, this is before DNA technology was widely used.
So Morton walks free, leaves
Oh.
Santa Fe,
Yeah,
and he relocates to Amarillo, Texas.
okay. A change of scenery?
You'd think a change of scenery might lead to a change in behavior.
Right.
But that wasn't the case.
Oh, no.
In 1990,
Yeah.
Kimberly Kendall, a 22-year-old secretary and college student,
Okay.
is also found raped and murdered in her apartment.
Oh, no.
And it was her husband who made this horrific discovery.
Oh, gosh.
This time, justice was served.
Okay.
Morton was convicted of Kim's murder and sentenced to life in prison.
Okay.
But,
But that's not the end of the story, is it?
no, it's not. This conviction was just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, wow.
It took years to uncover the full extent of his crimes.
Okay.
And the connections between all these seemingly unrelated cases.
Wow.
Yeah, so you would think the story ends there,
Right.
with Morton behind bars.
Right.
But it doesn't.
It does.
6 years later, in 1996,
Mm-hmm.
Santa Fe police start noticing some similarities between Kim Kendall's murder,
Right.
and Janet Benoit's unsolved murder from back in 1983.
And this is what's so interesting about police work.
Yeah,
It's that power of observation
right.
and experience.
Like putting together the pieces of a puzzle.
Exactly.
Right.
Even though these cases were years apart,
Yeah.
the investigators recognize a potential pattern.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how seemingly small details can lead to these major breakthroughs.
Absolutely. So in 2003, Morton confesses killing both Janet Benoit and Terry Lynn Mulvaney,
Wow.
the very woman that his former cellmate had accused him of murdering.
Yeah. It's just incredible how it comes full circle.
Yeah. It really makes you think about all those unsolved cases out there and the possibility of some of them could be solved with new evidence or technology.
It's a glimmer of hope,
Yeah.
but also a reminder that
Yeah.
some cases might never be fully solved.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Morton pleads guilty to both murders
Okay.
and receives another life sentence.
Right.
But remember, he spent years in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
And that's where things get even more complex.
Okay.
And the number of potential victims starts to grow.
Because during the 1980s, while Morton was living in Santa Fe,
Yeah.
there were a number of unsolved murders
Right.
of young women.
Right. And David Bruce Morton quickly becomes a prime suspect in several of them.
Of course.
Okay, so let's delve into a couple of these potential connections.
Yeah.
That really stood out to me.
Okay.
First, we have Teal Piddington.
Okay.
She was 18 years old, found murdered in 1985.
Wow.
Her body was found in a culvert near Laramie, so decomposed that she had to be identified through dental records.
Oh my gosh.
It's just awful.
It really underscores the brutality of these crimes
Yeah.
and the challenges that investigators face when they're dealing with cases where decomposition makes identification impossible.
Absolutely. And then there's Susan Laporte,
Okay.
a 25-year-old visiting a friend in Santa Fe from Boston.
Okay.
And she was tragically murdered in December 1985.
Oh, wow.
Her body was found bound and strangled, hidden beneath a juniper tree.
Oh my gosh.
And years later, in 2009,
Yeah.
DNA evidence linked her face to the unsolved murder of Marie Padilla,
Oh, wow.
who was 29 years old and killed in 1985.
So two seemingly separate cases.
Oh, yeah. Connected years later
I know.
through DNA.
It's a game changer.
It really is.
For law enforcement.
Yeah.
It's also a stark reminder that even with these advancements,
Right.
some cases may never be fully solved.
Yeah.
And that brings us to Michelle Quintana,
Okay.
a 23-year-old real estate worker who vanished in 1987.
Oh, wow.
Her truck was found at a local mall,
Mm-hmm.
and witnesses reported seeing her get into a red Jeep with two men.
Okay.
Sadly, she was never found.
These missing person cases are just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because the families never get closure.
Right. It's just a constant state of uncertainty.
Yeah. And grief.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the case of Roberta Michelle Montoya,
Okay.
a 20-year-old whose skeletal remains were found in 1987.
Oh, wow.
Her death was assumed to be a homicide,
Mm-hmm.
but no connection to Morton has ever been established.
Right. And that just highlights another complexity
Yeah.
we see in these types of investigations.
Right.
Even when a potential serial killer is identified.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to definitively link them to every unsolved case.
Right. So it's possible that Morton was responsible for more crimes than we know of,
Yeah,
but we may never have enough evidence to prove it.
exactly. And that's one of the most frustrating aspects
Yeah.
of these cases.
So many lives cut short,
Yeah.
so many unanswered questions.
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah, and the question that keeps coming back to me is, how did someone like David Bruce Morton
Yeah,
manage to evade capture for so long?
for so long.
What allowed him to continue his crimes and leave a trail of victims in his wake?
Well, that's a complex question.
Yeah.
With multiple layers.
Yeah.
And it's something we'll definitely delve deeper into in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay.
But for now,
Yeah.
let's take a step back
Okay.
and analyze what we've learned so far
Okay.
about Morton's modus operandi.
Okay, what patterns emerge when we look at his confirmed victims?
Right.
We know that they were all young women, but are there any other common threads?
That's a great question, and it's something that we'll explore in more detail next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Picking up where we left off last time, let's dive into David Bruce Morton's modus operandi.
Okay.
All three of his confirmed victims were young women, in their early 20s,
Right.
living seemingly ordinary lives.
Yeah, a traveler, a secretary, a college student.
Yeah,
It's almost as if he was targeting women who might be perceived as vulnerable,
right.
or at least who wouldn't necessarily raise immediate alarm bells if they went missing.
That's a good observation.
Yeah,
It's like he was preying on those who might slip through the cracks,
right.
whose disappearances might not trigger a massive investigation right away.
And what about the locations of the attacks?
Yeah,
2 out of the 3 murders took place in the victims' own homes,
right.
like places where they should have felt safe and secure.
Exactly. This suggests that Morton might have been comfortable infiltrating these seemingly safe spaces.
Right.
Perhaps even using, his charm or perceived normalcy to gain access to his victims.
It's chilling.
Yeah,
Think about.
it is.
Now, let's talk about the method of killing.
Okay.
Janet Benoit and Kim Kendall were both stabbed multiple times,
Right.
specifically in the back and neck.
Yeah, and this detail is really significant.
Right.
The stabbings, particularly to the back, could indicate, an element of surprise
Yeah.
or ambush, and the repeated blows to vital areas like the necks suggests a level of rage,
Yeah.
or maybe even a sadistic pleasure in inflicting pain.
It's a disturbing thought.
It is.
And then we have Terry Lynn Mulvaney, who was raped and strangled.
Right.
This brings up the question of sexual motivation,
Mm-hmm.
which sadly is a recurring theme in many serial killer cases.
It's often a really complex interplay of power control and sadism.
Right.
For some offenders, the act of violence itself, particularly sexual violence, becomes a twisted form of gratification.
So taking all of this into account, his
Hmm.
early criminal history,
Mm-hmm.
the escalation of violence, the choice of victims, the methods used,
Right.
what can we infer about Morton's psychological profile?
Well, I have to preface this by saying I'm not a licensed psychologist.
Okay.
But based on the information we have, it's possible that Morton fits the profile of an organized killer.
Okay.
He planned his attacks,
Right.
targeted specific victims, took steps to avoid detection.
Yeah, that makes sense. Remember how he escaped from prison?
Right.
He was able to relocate and seemingly start over in a new city.
Exactly.
That takes a certain level of planning and organization.
Precisely. There's also a clear disregard for human life, a lack of empathy that's truly chilling.
Right.
And the fact that he was able to blend in with society to appear normal to his neighbors and acquaintances,
Yeah.
it makes it all the more terrifying.
It's a stark reminder that evil can often work in the most unexpected places.
It can.
And it circles back to our earlier point.
Right.
How did someone like Morton manage to evade capture for so long?
Well, I think several factors were likely at play.
Yeah.
For one, as we mentioned, he was adept at appearing normal,
Right.
blending in with society.
Yeah.
It's almost like a chameleon effect,
Right.
adapting to their surroundings and masking their true nature.
It's unsettling.
His ability to compartmentalize,
Right.
to present a facade of normalcy while harboring such darkness within,
Mm-hmm.
it's a hallmark of many successful predators.
It's unsettling to think about, but it also highlights the importance of being aware of those around us.
Absolutely.
Not just strangers, but also people we might consider acquaintances or even friends.
Exactly. And another factor that likely worked in Morton's favor was the limited forensic technology
Right.
available at the time.
Yeah, this was before DNA testing was widely used.
Right.
So even when investigators had suspicions, they often lacked the concrete evidence
Right.
needed to connect him definitively to the crimes.
Exactly.
So in a way, he was able to exploit the limitations of forensic science at the time.
You could say that.
It's almost as if he was operating in a period where it was easier to get away with these kinds of crimes.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah,
But we also have to consider, the societal context of the time.
right.
The 1980s in many ways was a period of transition for law enforcement.
Okay.
Agencies were still developing and refining their approaches to investigating serial crimes.
So you're saying that there was a learning curve, so to speak,
Yeah.
in terms of understanding and recognizing the patterns of serial killers.
Exactly. There was a lack of awareness and understanding about the psychology of these offenders,
Right.
their methods, and the subtle clues they often leave behind.
Yeah,
And it's not meant to excuse any missteps or oversight,
of course.
but it's important to acknowledge the historical context
Yeah.
in which these investigations took place.
Looking back, do you think there are any missed opportunities?
Well,
Any red flags that could have potentially led to Morton's capture earlier?
hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah.
But yes, there were moments where things could have gone differently.
Yeah.
The case of Terry Lynn Mulvaney with the cellmate's claim of a confession really stands out.
Right, and despite a petition and a trial,
Yeah.
there wasn't enough evidence to secure a conviction.
Right. It's a tragic example of how the justice system can sometimes fail victims,
Yeah.
especially when relying solely on eyewitness testimony or confessions that can't be corroborated.
Right. It raises questions about whether a different approach or a more thorough investigation at that time could have led to a different outcome.
It does.
It's a haunting thought.
Yeah.
What if those early suspicions had been pursued more aggressively? Could other lives have been saved?
Those are really difficult questions to grapple with.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's the responsibility of the justice system to learn from past cases,
Right.
to constantly refine investigative techniques,
Mm.
and to ensure that every piece of evidence is thoroughly examined.
Yeah.
And that's where advancements like DNA technology have truly revolutionized the field.
Absolutely. DNA technology provides a level of certainty and irrefutability that was simply not possible before.
Right.
It's been instrumental in solving cold cases and exonerating the wrongly accused,
Right.
which are both incredibly important aspects of seeking justice.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of science and technology
Yeah.
to aid in the pursuit of truth and accountability.
Absolutely.
And these advancements continue to evolve at an astonishing pace.
That's incredible.
It is new techniques and databases are constantly being developed,
Yeah.
allowing investigators to solve cases that were once considered unsolvable.
So even though Morton is behind bars,
Yeah,
the investigation into his crimes might not be entirely over?
that's right.
Wow.
As DNA technology progresses, it's possible that new evidence could emerge,
Right.
potentially linking Morton to other unsolved cases or even exonerating him from crimes that he may not have committed.
It's both fascinating and unsettling to think about.
It is.
The potential for new discoveries even years or decades after a case has seemingly been closed?
Right. But it's also a reminder that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
It's about seeking the truth, no matter how long it takes or how difficult the path may be.
Now shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
I can't help but think about the families of the victims.
Yeah.
The pain and loss they must have endured, the years of not knowing, the constant fear and wondering.
Unimaginable.
Yeah.
The impact of these crimes extends far beyond the immediate victims.
Right.
It ripples outwards, affecting families, friends, and entire communities.
Yeah.
And for some, even with Morton's conviction, the questions and the grief may never truly go away.
Absolutely, and that's why it's so important to remember that these cases are not just abstract stories or crime statistics.
Right.
They represent real lives, lost families, shattered, and communities forever scarred by violence.
It's a somber truth that we must never forget. Each victim had a story, a life full of hopes and dreams that was tragically cut short.
Right.
Their lives mattered,
Yeah.
and their stories deserve to be remembered.
Their stories deserve to be remembered, and their voices deserve to be heard.
Absolutely.
And it's a reminder that justice, while sometimes delayed, is essential for healing and closure.
But justice alone isn't enough.
Right.
We must also strive to understand the root causes of violence,
Mm-hmm.
to create a society where such tragedies are less likely to occur.
Right.
We need to address issues like poverty,
Yeah.
inequality access to mental health care, and the glorification of violence in our culture.
Absolutely.
These are complex societal problems that require multifaceted solutions.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into the life and crimes of David Bruce Morton,
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways you think our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's crucial to recognize the importance of vigilance.
Okay.
We need to be aware of our surroundings, take steps to protect ourselves and our loved ones, and trust our instincts when something feels wrong.
Right.
This isn't about living in fear,
Right.
but about being empowered with knowledge and awareness.
I completely agree. We can't control everything that happens in our lives,
Right.
but we can be mindful of potential risks and take steps to mitigate them.
Another key takeaway is the critical role of law enforcement
Yeah.
in investigating and prosecuting violent crimes.
Right.
The detectives, the forensic experts, the prosecutors who worked tirelessly to bring Morton to justice
Yeah.
deserve our utmost respect and gratitude.
Absolutely.
Their dedication and commitment to seeking justice, often in challenging circumstances, is truly commendable.
It's easy to take their work for granted,
It is.
but they are often the unsung heroes in these dark and complex cases.
Right.
And we can't forget the importance of advancements in forensic science,
Yes.
particularly DNA technology, which played a crucial role in connecting Morton to his crimes
Right.
and potentially linking him to other unsolved cases.
These technological advancements have truly transformed the landscape of criminal justice.
Yeah.
They provide a level of precision and accuracy that was previously unimaginable.
And as we've seen in Morton's case, DNA evidence can be a powerful tool for not only securing convictions,
Right.
but also for exonerating the wrongly accused.
It's a beacon of hope.
Yeah.
in a system that can sometimes be flawed and imperfect.
And I think it's essential to acknowledge the impact of these crimes on the victims and their families. These
Absolutely.
weren't just abstract cases.
Right.
They were real people whose lives were tragically cut short, leaving behind a legacy of pain and loss.
Their stories serve as a reminder of the human cost of violence and the importance of empathy and compassion in our responses to these tragedies.
Right.
We must remember the victims, honor their memories, and support their families in their journey toward healing.
And as a society, we have a responsibility to work towards a future where these kinds of horrific acts are less likely to occur.
Absolutely.
We need to address the root causes of violence, promote understanding and empathy, and strive to create a world where everyone feels safe and secured.
That's a powerful and important message to leave our listeners with.
Yeah,
We may not have all the answers,
of course.
and the journey toward a more peaceful and just society is ongoing.
Right.
But we must continue to have these conversations, to learn from the past, and to work towards a better future.
We've been talking about, the need for vigilance and
Right.
the evolution of forensic science.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, what if there were specific missteps in Morton's case?
Yeah, it's natural to look back and kind of question whether anything could have been done differently.
Right.
But you have to remember, investigations unfold in real time,
Right.
with limited information available at each stage.
I guess what I'm grappling with is the idea that maybe, just maybe, some of these tragedies could have been prevented.
That's a heavy thought, and it's a burden that investigators often carry.
Yeah.
That pressure to solve cases, to bring perpetrators to justice, and to protect potential victims.
Right.
It's immense.
I can only imagine
Yeah.
the weight of that responsibility.
It's a lot. But, dwelling on what if doesn't change the past.
Right.
What's crucial is that we learn from these cases,
Okay.
that we use them as opportunities to improve investigative techniques, to refine our understanding of criminal behavior,
Right.
and to advocate for policies that promote safety and justice.
You're right. It's about turning tragedy into a catalyst for positive change.
Exactly.
So what can we learn from David Bruce Morton's case?
Yeah.
What stands out to me as the most significant takeaways, especially for our listeners who might be, interested in true crime or criminal justice?
Well, one of the most striking aspects of this case, I think, is how it highlights the evolution of forensic science.
Right.
We've talked about DNA technology and its impact on solving crimes.
Hmm.
But Morton's case also underscores the importance of seemingly minor details.
Yeah.
Like, remember the motel master key issue in Janek Benoist's murder?
Yeah, it's a detail that could have easily been overlooked.
Right.
But it ended up playing a significant role in understanding the vulnerability of the crime scene.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a reminder that every piece of information, no matter how small, can be crucial to an investigation.
Right.
And it speaks to the meticulous work of crime scene investigators and forensic analysts
Right.
who, painstakingly collect and analyze evidence.
Their attention to detail, their commitment to uncovering the truth, even in the most gruesome of circumstances.
Yeah,
It's truly remarkable.
it is. And their work has become even more sophisticated with advancements in technology.
Right.
Like, imagine what investigators could accomplish today with tools that weren't available back then.
Right.
Things like facial recognition, software, digital footprint analysis, and advanced DNL databases.
It's almost like we're entering a new era of crime solving,
Yeah,
where technology is playing an increasingly crucial role.
we are. And while these advancements offer incredible potential for solving crimes and preventing future tragedies,
Right.
they also raise important ethical questions
Right.
about privacy surveillance and the potential for misuse.
It's a reminder that technology is a double-edged sword.
It is.
We have to be mindful of its implications
Mhm.
and ensure that it's used responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
I think another crucial takeaway from Morton's case is the importance of understanding the psychology of these offenders.
Right. Why do they commit these horrific acts?
Right? What drives them?
What drives them?
These are complex questions,
Yeah.
but gaining insight into their motivations can help us develop strategies for prevention and intervention.
It's about moving beyond simply catching the bad guys.
Right.
And delving into the root causes of criminal behavior.
Exactly. And it's not about excusing their actions,
Right.
but about understanding the factors that contribute to their choices.
Right.
Whether it's mental illness, trauma, societal influences,
Yeah.
or a combination of these.
And that understanding can inform our approach to criminal justice, to rehabilitation, and to creating a society that addresses the underlying issues that contribute to violence.
It's a holistic approach that recognizes the interconnectedness of individual behavior and societal structures.
So if we were to distill all of this down to a few key messages for our listeners,
Yeah.
what would we say are the most important things to remember?
First, I'd say never underestimate the power of observation and attention to detail,
Okay.
whether it's in your personal life or in your community.
Hmm.
Being aware of your surroundings and noticing subtle changes or red flags can be crucial for preventing crime
Yeah.
and ensuring safety.
It's about being present, being engaged, and trusting your instincts.
Exactly. Second, I'd emphasize the importance of supporting law enforcement
Right.
and advocating for advancements in forensic science and investigative techniques.
Okay.
These are the tools that help bring perpetrators to justice
Yeah.
and provide answers for victims, their families.
And finally, I think it's crucial to remember that violence is never the answer. It's about promoting empathy, understanding, and compassion in our interactions with others. It's
Yeah.
about fostering a culture of respect and recognizing the inherent dignity of every human being.
Beautifully said. If we can embrace those values, both individually and collectively,
Yeah.
I believe we can create a world where tragedies like those committed by David Bruce Morton become less and less frequent.
It's a vision worth striving
It
for
is.
and a message worth sharing.
Absolutely
So,
right.
to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has been informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Yeah,
Remember, knowledge is power.
it is.
And the more we understand about these complex issues,
Mhm.
the better equipped we are to create a safer, more just, and more compassionate world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to diving into another fascinating case with you next time.